Okay, so it is my great pleasure to chair this presentation of the third issue of World Literature Studies with the title Ukrainian Literature as a Witness of Russia's War Against Ukraine, edited by Olha Voznyuk of the Institute of Slavonic Studies of the Czech Academy of Sciences in Prague, who is here in presence, and by Kristina Vorontsova of Jagiellonian University in Krakow, who is here online. The idea for this issue came to me in March 2023 when I attended a panel on Ukrainian anti-war literature at the conference of the British Association of Slavonic and Eastern European Studies at University of Glasgow. And I approached Kristina and Olha to do this issue. And as we were discussing the issue, we had no idea that 2.5 years later, when the issue is published, this war would still be going on with no clear end in sight. And so I think it is even more important that these articles are being published. As I was reading it, I was deeply impressed by the resilience and the power of collective resistance that these texts emanate. And I think the importance of Ukrainian literature in the current war is best demonstrated by one fact that is written in Olha's article, which says that after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia in 2022, 270 new publishing houses were registered in Ukraine, and the book output increased by 73%. I don't want to talk long, so I will give this over to Olha and Kristina. So the plan is that Olha and Kristina will explain their concept, how the issue was put together, and then we will hear presentations, short 5-minute presentations from each author about their article. At the end of this, we will open it to discussion. Okay. So, Kristina, I think it's over to you now.
Yeah, thank you. Dear colleagues, I send warm greetings to all of you from Krakow, November Krakow. And I would like to say a few words about the history, and Dobrota has already mentioned this buses event. For me, it was a very important project which was taking shape for more than 2 years and has finally reached a happy conclusion thanks to the active participation of everyone involved. Like Dobrota mentioned, 2023, Glasgow, Scotland, the first post-pandemic conference of British Slavists, which brought together more than 700 participants from around the world. And Ukrainian was the central theme of this conference for sure. And I was fortunate to speak at a small, really small and cozy panel dedicated to culture's response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where my co-editor Olga was also supposed to present, but unfortunately couldn't come in person during the time. My presentation focused on the impact of the full-scale war on the poetry of the Odessa poet Yevhen Soya. So, and after the discussion, again, as Dobrota has already mentioned, she approached me, and she's the moderator of today's meeting also. And I received an offer one simply couldn't refuse. This is how the idea for this thematic issue of world literature studies was born, and I had the good fortune of becoming one of its editors. I want to thank Dobrota for her trust and for our effective collaboration. Working on world literature studies became my first experience with scholarly editing on such a scale. So, of course, I couldn't have managed it alone, and I allowed myself to recommend Olha for the role of the second and to be honest, rather the first editor, I was absolutely right to do so. I want to express my deep gratitude to Olha for her understanding, wisdom, assertiveness, patience, and expertise. Through many discussions, we managed to develop a coherent concept for the future thematic issue, and I believe that Olha will speak on it in details. We created a work schedule, wrote the call for papers, and began circulating the information among colleagues. We decided that this issue should serve as a form of support for everyone directly affected by the war, and therefore we intentionally sent invitations only to colleagues from Ukraine. Unfortunately, not all declarations of interest turned into full articles, and this too is a consequence of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Powerful outages, stress, constant worry for families in Kiev, Lviv, Zaporizhia, and other Ukrainian cities. Yet our authors, whose work appears in the thematic issue and who are present at today's event, created profound scholarly studies despite everything. They always responded promptly to editorial requests and met all deadlines. Dear authors, thank you immensely. And I would also like to thank the reviewers who are not present, but they helped a lot. The reviewers from around the world who put so much effort into carefully and thoroughly analyzing each text and suggesting ways to refine and improve them. When we began working on this thematic issue, I had a timid hope that the war would have ended before the publication process was complete. Unfortunately, that hope didn't come true. However, this issue itself and our wonderful authors is proof that Ukraine does not and will not give in. It will stand firm against evil. Glory to Ukraine. Slava Ukraine. So, Olha, floor is yours.
Героям слава! Kristina, thank you very much for such a kind introduction, and thank you very much for your support and co-organizations in all the processes that we went through 2 years. Also, my big thank and admiration is to Dobrota, Dr. Dobrota Pucherova. That was actually your idea that inspired us to create that special issue. And I remember when we met in Vienna to discuss about all the details, you were definitely sure that in 2025 the war will be finished and it will be very good historical document about the resilience and resistance of Ukrainian literature. Unfortunately, today several cities were again bombed and shelled by Russia, Ternopil, Lviv, Kharkiv, and so on. And in Ternopil, almost half of the building was destroyed, and we have around 10 people who were killed by the Russian rockets. So unfortunately, nowadays, the Ukrainian literature and art still need to resist to that war and to respond it. And with that action of Ukrainian culture and literature, we see that famous slogan, art is beyond the war, doesn't work at all. That art is one of the instrument, a tool which resists the war and help to go on for Ukrainians in that unfair fight for their freedom. I would like to thank very much to the editor-in-chief, Yana Tsvikova and Eva Kenderesi, because with all your support and all your wise advice that we received, that special issue is presented nowadays in that way. I would like to thank to Yana Tsvikova, because that was your idea to give a floor to Ukrainian scholars who are in Ukraine. That's why we approach with our call for papers, let's say targetedly Ukrainian institutions, universities, and we were in touch with Ukrainian scholars who were at that time in Ukraine working under the shelling every day. And as already Kristina mentioned, unfortunately, not all of that abstracts and articles were finished because of the life circumstances. But we are very happy that we were able to build this issue, showing that variety of topics and variety of the form of resilience in Ukrainian literature that are now developing in Ukraine, and that is actually, let's say, the history of the resilience of Ukrainian literature and Ukrainian art nowadays. For example, we have several articles that are devoted to the narration of trauma amid the war. We have several articles who are following the topic of the prose and poetry and the peculiarities of narration that war trauma in that genres. We have articles devoted to the ego document and surviving the war. Combatant prose, the comics, Ukrainian comics and heroes of that Ukrainian comics that are showing the process of narrating that war circumstances and life amid the war. And we have articles devoted to the female perspective of war, and also what is also important, article devoted to the Ukrainian minority literature, actually Azov's Greek. And I don't want to take a lot of time presenting the articles because we have almost all authors presented now online here, and I would be very happy to give the floor to the authors to present their articles and their experience and how it was written. Thank you very much.
So do we start with?
Yes, but unfortunately I don't see her online because I received some emails today that due to the problems with the electricity, some of our colleagues will not be able to join us. Yeah, maybe we will start with Svetlana Hajduk.
Thank you, I'm here. Do you hear me well?
Yes, and we also have your PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, thank you, because, so thank you. I would like you to share it, because as you know, I have already arrived in Budapest today for a conference, so that is why I do not have my laptop with me.
Yes, we will share it.
Okay, thank you. So, dear colleagues, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. And as you see, the title of my article is Discourse on the Traumatic Experience of Ukrainian Internally Displaced and Refugee Women, a Boyfriend, a Family by Irina Feofanova. So the focus of my study is Irina Feofanova's debut collection of short stories, Чужа своя рідна, in English translation, A Boyfriend, a Family, published in 2023, which examines topics such as forced displacement and refugeeism, national identification, and the peculiarities of Ukrainian women's lives before and after the start of the war. It also portrays the adaptation to the traumatic reality brought about by Russia's military aggression. The narrative is rooted in the interdisciplinary fields of contemporary humanities and trauma studies alongside approaches developed by feminist criticism. So the collection was written during the writer's crucial and formative stay in Krakow under the Artistic and Translation Residency Program funded by the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage of the Republic of Poland. So maybe you will share the fourth or the third slide.
Is it like that?
Mm-hmm. So the second one is the book. Okay, Irina Feofanova's Чужа своя рідна consists of 8 short stories that differ in style as well as in length. The story Gestalts is 4 pages long, while War Kitchen and 8 Strangers is 41 pages. The stories are presented in various narrative forms, such as monologues, descriptions, dialects, diary entries, and WhatsApp correspondence. The plots also vary, with some stories ending happily and others more somberly. However, all the stories are united by a single theme: the painful experience of war and forced displacement and refugee status of Ukrainian women. Analyzing Fefanova's collection, 3 factors that underline the trauma of Ukrainian women refugees and internally displaced persons can be considered. The shock of the war experience, which produces actual physiological changes and diseases, the loss of home, which has impacts beyond the loss of a physical space, and the devaluation of their lives in the war, and a collapse of their worldview, which manifests itself as uncertainty and confusion about the present and the future.
It's better than we can hear the author than
Without the slides.
without this manipulation there. Better nechajte to. Aby to nevyrušilo.
Yes. Sorry, we are unable to share your slides, so we prefer...
Okay, I understand it. So that is why I continue. Yes,
Yes.
my presentation without this. I understand that there is a problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
The character's condition is especially acute abroad in the world outside the war, in the new organized spatial sphere where the surrounding space and environment seem devoid of any signs of violence, fear, and restrictions. Despite their new geographical reality, all the characters in Fefanova's short stories have traumatic memories. All of the stories in her collection are structurally heterogeneous but interconnected in 3 dimensions. The first one, that is the common theme of war, which the writer always presents as a reason for her characters' traumas. The second one, the perception of war not only as a tragic problem of Ukrainian society as a whole, but also as a tragedy of a particular Ukrainian family or individual. And the third one, the focus on a refugee or internally displaced woman protagonist who draws on her inner strength to cope with pain, despair, and anxiety, not only to survive, but to live fully regardless of their circumstances or location. So thank you for your attention.
thank you very much. So do we now give it over to Tatiana Grebenyuk?
Yeah.
Yes,
please.
Tatiana, are you here?
Yes, thank you. At first, I would like to thank you for launching this project, and it is very important to feel this unity to East European country, to European countries, and to the world through your initiative. And it is really invaluable in the time of war. And I would express my gratefulness for accepting my article here. It is an honor for me to be here in a good company. And I would like to say a little bit about my topic, my article. It was devoted to the works of contemporary Ukrainian writer Volodymyr Raffayenko, whose life story is very expository, very telling in regard of Ukrainian identity shaping during the war. And the topic of my article is the motive of orphanhood in the narrative of trauma and healing, Volodymyr Raffayenko's fiction about Russia's war against Ukraine. At first, why the story of Volodymyr Raffayenko is so telling? Because he was initially a Russian-speaking writer, and he lived in Donetsk, And the story of his family and his identity and identity of his family was not so important for him, and he tried to promote his works in Russia. And then after the beginning of war in 2014, he was forced to flee from Donbass, and he settled with his family settled in Kyiv. And then he started learning Ukrainian language. He knew it, but not at so very high level, as it was very important for Raffayenko as a perfectionist, as a brilliant writer. I really appreciate his works. And it was not enough for him to know Ukrainian language just on the level of everyday life. And he improved his Ukrainian language and tried to write in turn in Russian and in Ukrainian. And then the full-scale aggression came. And he manifested that he rejects to use Russian language in his future works. And he started writing in Ukrainian, and he felt his identity as changed, and he felt this change as a resurrection of his Ukrainian part, his family part of identity in his contemporary personality. And the main concept of my article is the motif of orphanhood, which is, of course, not only understood as a literal orphanhood, but also as a political metaphor. In a political sense, as a metaphor, it might be understood and should be understood, since Raffayenko meant exactly this, at first as a decline of Donbass, decline by Ukraine of Donbass as a part of Ukraine, in view of the population of Donbass. They felt like orphans. But of course, it was not true, because nobody refused from them, and it was only political, it was military power of Russia and hybrid war, which was the source of the political situation established after the beginning of war, when our territories in Donbass were occupied. And then after first experience of fleeing from one place to another, Volodymyr Raffayenko started writing in Ukrainian language and reconsidered this motif of orphanhood in other context, and then it became more literal orphanhood. For example, in his novel Petrikor «Запах землі після дощу», Volodymyr Raffayenko writes about history of humans who became orphans because of this war. And here we see the story of trauma, of personal trauma mostly. I'm not going to retell all my article. Everybody has the opportunity to read it. And I would like to emphasize that it is very important for me to have the opportunity to read articles of my colleagues printed in the journal. And this is one more important thing made by the editors to collect exactly this article and exactly form exactly this set of articles and senses, because this is a point of view, frame of reference. This is not just different articles. This is a conception, and this is a complex whole. So thank you for these opportunities, and it was a great pleasure to participate in this project. Thank you very much to editors for improving our text, personally my text. I'm really grateful for this. And it is really great opportunity to be part of this project. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And
Prepnite to na jedného človeka, ktorý hovorí niečo.
On nevím, jak to se...
my to tak vidíme. My vidíme jedného člověka.
Ale
Vy vidíte ten
video.
Dobre, tak nič, tak pozerajte, vidíte.
Okay. And what about Olena Romanenko?
I don't see her here. Do we have here Olena Romanenko with us? No,
No.
unfortunately.
Okay. Okay, so I will now give it over to Olha Voznyuk, who will speak about her own contribution.
Thank you very much. And I would like also to add that according to my knowledge, there is a first special issue in English language fully devoted to the Ukrainian literature as witness of the Russia's war against Ukraine nowadays. So we don't have any other special issue devoted to this topic. And I'm very proud that we made it. In my article, I decided to focus on the narration of war through the female perspective. So I decided to compare the narratives of Yulia Musakovska and Svetlana Povalyeva, and I chose the poetry collection Мінлива хмарність з проясненням, partly cloudy with clearing of Svetlana Povalyeva, and published in 2022, and the poetry collection of Yulia Musakovska, Каміння і цвяхи, Stones and Nails, 2024. Both of these poets are well established and very well known Ukrainian writers, who are also not only in Ukraine, but also their poetry is translated into other languages. I focused myself on the concept of time in that two poetry collections and space. As we can see in the book of Musakovska, she divides the time a priori, the war, and a posteriori, the war. So how the life was before the war and after the war. And we see that changes of values that happened when the war abrupt. And in the poetry collection of Svetlana Povalyeva, which is devoted to the grief of her youngest son, who is a fallen soldier on that war, she devoted the space on the zones. The zone 0 is the front line, and how is the life is changing when you go from the zone line to the zone 3, let's say, safety place. The question, do we have a safety space or safety places during the war, which asked also Musakovska? And the answer is we don't have any safety place during the war. What can be considered safety nowadays? Where is that safetyness? And the other question which I ask, how is important the role of the writer during the war? Because some writers were witnessing the lack of, let's say, poetic or prose production. They were not able to write during that circumstances. However, Musakovska emphasized, and I quote her poem, "Who said that words have no value now? Our words, hard and swollen with rage, black from grief, like the concrete covering of an old bomb shelter. There is nothing more durable, nothing less fleeting." So that role of the writer, poet during the war, and a person who presents the country, let's say that collective trauma, is very important. And the voicing that trauma of war and what is going on is also the part of that collective memory. Because according to the idea of Aleida Assmann, Ukraine is now suffering on the memory side, like its ethnocide and memory side, due to the fact that a lot of poets, writers, and people of culture are killed every day in Ukraine. And the last point, what I want to mention is poetry as a commemoration. Actually, the whole book of Svetlana Povalaeva is devoted to her son Roman Ratushny, the fallen soldier. And that is her way to commemorate her son. Even in the preface to the book, she mentioned that let people remember you while reading this book. So that is my point of view, that during the war, the poets and writers, they have a special, let's say, mission to be the voice of the country, to be the voice of the culture. Thank you very much. Yes, Tatiana.
So we now have an article written by two authors, Tatiana Ryazantseva and Evgenia
Evgenia, yeah.
So it's over to you.
I'm trying to share the screen. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
We can, but the other
we
cannot.
So I start my presentation, and first of all, I would like to start with a great thanks to the organizers, to people who launched this project.
Already good.
Do you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Yeah. My special thanks to Kristina and Olga, who invited us to this project, and really for your very kind support and editing work, and always ready to work with the stretching of the deadlines, our circumstances. And it was really tough because, for example, when we were submitting this paper, exactly it was the autumn when my son returned after 2 years and 5 months of Russian captivity, and I was torn between staying with my son and doing my academic duties, performing my academic duties, and really we all live through this war. And our article is about the very first month of the war, and the very first words which were said, which were published in the social media. And it is really very important, in our opinion, to analyze the poetry which was written in that period, because poetry, when your your tongue is muted, when you cannot express what you are really feeling, it's even exactly poetry helps to express yourself, because it is like an immediate response, and the audience is widest in the social media. You have the direct expression of your feelings, and the highest level of generalization at the same time. Actually, you merge the universal with a deeply personal experience. And when you read the poetry of a person who is suffering the same which you are, it really helps, provide you the coping strategies. Actually, from the very first day of the Great Invention, we started to collect the poetry, especially, and you can see in the second slide the women who wrote the poems which we were collecting, all of them suffering the same which we did, which we were, and they were in the different, and they still are in different places of Ukraine, in Kiev, in Kharkiv, in Lviv, in Cherkasy, in Zhytomyr, so in the north and south and west and east of Ukraine. And we all were like on the same wave, on the same tune. And when time have passed and we started to analyze, because we are literature scholar, we cannot stop ourselves from analyzing, we understood that this poetry is very close to the metaphysical poetry, which Tatiana is a great specialist in. So metaphysical poetry channels the catastrophic worldview. It represents the universe, universe and the cause of human life as suffering. It seeks to understand and emotionally grasp the paradoxical unity of the transcendent and the stable within the dynamic process of existence, and it explores complex dynamic phenomena that encompass both the spiritual and material dimensions of individual existence, death and time, religion, love and beauty, and loneliness. And what is also very important, it focuses on conflicting emotions and states of mind and longs for an intimate connection with the divine. Here you can see two examples of our collection, two poems wrote by two mothers on the second day and third day of the Great War, and they are all represent the talk of the mother and the child, and the talk of a city. I wanted to say which, but a city is who here, a city who demonstrates his or her resilience to the enemy. And another example of a poetry here by Natalka Fursa, it is translated into English here. Ukrainian poetry of March 2022 contains a time which is experienced as either stopped or extended. It's present time all the time. And as Тетяна Власова says, 24 лютого сталося вчора. 24th of February happened yesterday, and every day is the 24th of February. It's longing for personal contact with the divine. It's being in the moment depicted as an ongoing transformation from tranquility to movement, from material to spiritual, from death to immortality. So the Ukrainian poetry of March 2022 is very close to the tradition of metaphysical poetry, but it also roots in our folkloric and magic worldview of our people. It's the history and memory which speaks through our roots. We call our enemy like an impersonal power or like such a monstrous creature, or we call it by the direct name. It happens that the sky becomes dangerous, like this night, for example, again and again. And the sky is dangerous in the contrast to the dungeon, to the underground, which becomes the space of protection and creation of life. So it becomes the sacred space, the mother womb, which interlocates with the real giving the birth to the child in the shelter, and the personification of the land, cities and villages. So the city talks, the city swears, the city protects themselves from the enemies who are monsters. And it is again and again a talk between a mother and a child. And language really matters, because when people are transmitting, when they are crossing the bridges, saving their life, they also have their move into Ukrainian language. And I would like to complete my presentation with pictures which were made by myself and a poem written by Людмила Горова, a very famous nowadays poet who wrote the famous poem Враже, буде тобі враже, так як відьма скаже, but it was written in April when some sort of generalization started. People get rid of the first shock and they started to generalize. And here they just an immediate response of the shelling of Zhytomyr, of my city, when the school was destroyed and only one wall was standing, a wall with a picture of Ukraine, of 30 Jubilee of Ukraine, and wooden toy house, which maybe was played by children of the junior classes, and it was lying after the shelling. So poetry, we do not call these poetry like metaphysical poetry. We identify it like a poetry of metaphysical paradigm, which with the present research focuses on poems that circulated on social networks from February 25 to March 23, 2022, a period marked by the most intense shock. From today's perspective, these poems reveal certain common elements in worldview, themes and style that allow their consideration within the paradigm of metaphysical poetry, guiding our choice of methods. This body of poetry reconfigures elements of cultural tradition, historical allusions, and personal trauma in a poetics of resilience, functioning simultaneously as a creative practice and a symbolic act of resistance. Thank you very much for your support, and thank you for standing with Ukraine.
Thank you very much. So I think we now give it over to Svitlana Pido-Prigora, who will talk about mission accomplished Ukrainian superhero comics in times of war.
Yes, and I really glad to be with you, and I'm really glad to be the one of the author of this special issue, a really nice one. And also I want to say some words about my articles about Ukrainian comics and also about Ukrainian superheroes. But you know, to speak about comics is like don't have sense without presenting some comics or some pictures. So and let's start. So my article, as you know, was devoted to the Ukrainian superheroes, and the idea to write such article was not new for me. I had some ideas about it before the war, and also I had several lectures before the war about Ukrainian superhero, because we have the image of Ukrainian superhero from the 2014, so from the beginning of the war, not from the full-scale invasion, but from earlier aggression. And my article, I divided into several parts. As you see, it's like introduction, and to speak about Ukrainian comics and Ukrainian superhero comics, you should mention about global superhero tradition, mostly about American one, but also it's very important to note that mostly in every country there are such national superheroes. For example, there are French superheroes, Polish superheroes, so we can find a lot of examples of it. Then next my part is like from children's coloring books to 17 plus comics, so it's about different genres in superhero comics in Ukrainian context. And the last part of my articles was devoted to the Ukrainian supermen and Ukrainian super women, again super villains. And as I said, I start my articles from the global perspective and mentioned several examples, mostly American one. It's Captain America, very well known. It's atomic comics and superhero, and it's very important that Captain America and Superman were appeared before the America entered the Second World War. So it also depicted the social needs in such superhero in society. And there are several levels of development of superhero comics in America. So we have Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Dark Modern Age, and Postmodern Digital Contemporary Age. But in the Ukrainian context, of course, we don't have such levels of development, because Ukraine has this Soviet heritage, and among this Soviet time, comics were not allowed, because it was like some examples of capitalistic art, and the most striking features of superhero is superpower, costumes, and hidden identity. But Ukrainian have different one. For example, we can speak about superpower, but also there aren't special costumes for Ukrainian superheroes, and there is no hidden identity. And I pay attention on several examples. As you see, it's several series devoted to superheroes. It's Ukrainian superheroes written, Ukrajinskej superheroi written by Olha Voznyuk, comic serial Patriot written by Vadim Nazarov, and series Охоронці країни, Guardian of Country, written by Leonid Krasnopolsky. And now, in 2023, we have another superhero comics more closer to our time, Світанок Героїв, Kharkiv. It's about the beginning of full-scale invasion, and it's also very important to note that Ukrainian superheroes are gathered mostly in teams. You see, there are 4 superheroes in one comic, then 4 superheroes in another one, and in modern one, in Світанок Героїв, the dawn of the hero Kharkiv, is also like 4 superheroes, and mostly men. And yes, supervillains, they are depicted according to the comic tradition, where there is only black and white. And so there are very nice superheroes and very bad supervillains. They are even not humans. It's like monsters, demons, robots, aliens, but also they are tightly connected to Ukrainian modern history, to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And here we can see the clear similarity to Russian leaders like Putin. It's in superhero comic Patriot, it's Pooh, and Lavrov. We have here the similarity of it. And I would like to say that my article and also my project is made with the support of Marie Skłodowskiej Career Action for Ukraine. And you are welcome to read my article, and reading my article, you will definitely know more about Ukrainian superheroes. Thank you very much.
Yes, and it's now over to Olenia Veklic. Sorry, it's my glasses. Who will speak about the topos of Mariupol in Ukrainian and Italian military literature, comparative aspects.
Okay. One second, please. Here it is. I'll share my screen.
And she's from the Taras Shevchenko National University in Kiev.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to and to thank to all the participants, to organizers, to editors. Thank very much, Kristina, for inviting me to participate. For me, it's an enormous honor. Okay, and thank you for the presentation. Of course, the topic of my article is the topos of Mariupol in Ukrainian and Italian literature. Comparative aspects. For me, as a professional in Italian and language and literature, it was interesting to see how to see the difference and common features in the style of writing about Ukrainian war. And unfortunately, Mariupol is a symbol of the war trauma of Ukrainian nation, and it was quite logical for me to analyze the topos of Mariupol in literature. Today we just heard a colleague that spoke about poetry of the first first days of the full-scale war, and my material deals with the same period. Two books were chosen from Italian literature. It was Assedio, il romanzo di Mariupol, that means the siege, the romance of Mariupol, and Mariupol Nadia, Mariupol Hope, let's say in such way, of Nadia Suforokova. On the first side, these two texts have a lot of features in common because both texts can be taken as diaries, as they depict the first days of the full-scale war in Mariupol, and both authors, as Nadia Suforokova as Andrea Nicastro, were present themselves in the city. But of course, these two books have two different readers, so of course texts were different, and for me it was important to see how. I analyzed for aspects, for example, such narrative forms, and then topos of Mariupol, how the city was described, and representation of Russian and Ukrainian characters, and the image of a child. As for narrative forms, of course, Mariupol Nadia, Mariupol Hope is a kind of diary that was born from posts of Nadia Suforokova in social networks, and just she described day per day how the things were in Mariupol. And if we talk about the position of author is a participant, because she participated, she describes the events that she was a participant of. With Italian literature, Italian book, the situation is a bit more different, as the Italian reader is distant from Ukrainian context, and a detailed description of military events may seem too hard to perceive and might look biased, as Italian reader doesn't have such an experience to live in the time of war. So the main goal of the author is to make reader believe him. As a result, Nicastro creates a completely new story. His approach reveals a key difference in the target audience. While Ukrainian literature speaks from within the trauma, Italian literature seeks to translate the trauma for an external, less involved readership. Also, Assedio has a futuristic element. It consists like from two parts. All the chapters have two parts. Like from the 2022, like all the events, and the memory of an old lady that speaks from 2092. Like she tells her memories about her adventures, about her life to the grandchild, like from the future. Then, Topos of Mariupol. Author, here on the slide I put two citations, one from book of Andrea Nicastro and the other one from Nadia Sukharukova. Andrea Nicastro describes the city as he sees it. He describes it is like something not very beautiful, not very attractive for touristic sphere, and just how he sees it without any emotional expressions. And as we see from the positions of the own and the other, it feels that the author is the other to the city. And Nadia Sukharukova speaks as about Mariupol as something that she really cares of and describes the city as she wants to see it, like my beautiful, my unique, my different, my most favorite city, and she is on to the city. Then representation of Russian and Ukrainian characters. Of course, in the book of Nadia Sukharukova, Russian characters is quite simple to talk. They are depicted as completely negative. But Andrea Nicastro needs to follow his Italian readers, and if you listen to some of his interviews, he can tell not all the Russians are monsters, and he introduces Russian characters, Russian soldiers, and he says they were kind, all in all. But if you see the description of Nadia Sukharukova of the similar event, of the moment when people interact with Russian soldiers, the feelings are completely different. Then, the image of a child. Between these two books, you can see the contrast of strategies of infantilization and de-infantilization. For the Italian book, it's more natural to see the strategy of infantilization. It's not only about the image of a child, even if I put here some citation about depiction of the children, children and in general people are not responsible for the situation. And in the book of Nadia Sukharukova, the situation is the opposite. Like a baby, even a baby understands what is going on and tries to save the parents, for example. A baby that feels the time of the shelling. Conclusion. Both texts examined in this article possess considerable cultural significance. Each plays a distinct role in documenting the events and social dynamics of war, shaped by the different perspectives of their intended audience. The Italian reader as an observer and the Ukrainian reader as a participant. Furthermore, both books can be regarded as a documentary testimony to wartime atrocity and potential war crimes. Okay, and this was it. And one more thank you to all. And for me, it's a great pleasure and a big honor to be here today with you. And big thank for accepting my work.
Thank you very much.
So do we have Julia Labecka here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. So Julia Labecka is from the Department of Greek Philology, Mariupol State University. And she will speak about national identity and resistance in Mykola Akbashi's original and translated Rumeyka language poetry. Do you have a PowerPoint that you want to share?
No, I haven't got.
Okay.
Now I see that it's better to have it, but sorry, I have.
It was not obligatory, so please, the floor is yours.
Okay, it's a great honor for me as well to present our articles, co-authored with Maria Nikolchenko and included in this special issue of World Literature Studies. Our research focuses on a very specific and often overlooked literary phenomenon, the emergence of resistance poetry written in Rumeyka, an endangered Greek minority language in the Azov region of Ukraine. The central figure of our article is Mykola Akbash, a young Ukrainian poet and police officer from near Mariupol, who writes original poetry and translates Ukrainian classics into Rumeyka. So let me introduce the context. Speaking about war, identity, and minority voices. Since 2014, and especially after Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukrainian literature has entered a new phase of war writing or literature of resistance. Poetry in particular has become a powerful medium of collective witnessing, a way to process trauma, preserve memory, and articulate national identity. But Ukrainian identity is not monolithic. Ukraine is home to many ethnic communities, and one of the largest among them is the Azov Greek minority, roughly 100,000 people, historically divided into two linguistic groups. One of these groups speaks Rumeyka, a variety of Greek shaped by centuries of isolation and by a dramatic history that includes displacement from Crimea in 1778 and mass repressions in the 1930s. In the 20th century, Rumeyka literature developed despite political pressures and re-emerged after Stalinist repressions only from 1960-1970s. Today, Rumeyka is again endangered, and after the occupation of Mariupol in 2022, many of its speakers have been displaced. So let us pass over to our poet, Mykola Akbash, poet, translator, and language activist. Against this backdrop, Mykola Akbash has become one of the most visible cultural figures of his community. His poetry written in 2022-2024 reflects the tragedy of his native Mariupol, the collective trauma of war, the search for hope and transcendence, and a reaffirmation of belonging both to Ukraine and to the Azov Greek community. He writes exclusively in Rumeyka, but often provides parallel Ukrainian translations. His works appear on social media, where he also publishes essays on Azov Greek history, vocabulary lists, and recordings of his readings. Symbolically, since 2022, he began using the Ukrainian alphabet for writing Rumeyka, breaking the Soviet-era practice of using Russian characters. This shift reflects a broader transformation of linguistic and ideological space in Eastern Ukraine. In our study, we also analyze his translations of Ukrainian classics, particularly poems by Shevchenko, Lesya Ukrainka, and Grigory Skovoroda. These translations are more than literary exercises. They create a dialogue between the dominant Ukrainian culture and a minority language, strengthening cultural integration while preserving linguistic distinctiveness. So our main findings, the article demonstrates that Akbash's poetry exemplifies minority resistance literature emerging from both war experience and the collective memory of oppression. His works combine ethnocultural symbols such as steppe, heron, oxen, local landscapes, with Ukrainian national symbols such as the Dnipro, freedom, or prophetic voices. His translations function as cultural bridges, making Rumeyka visible within Ukrainian discourse and integrating Ukrainian symbols into Rumeyka literary space. Overall, Akbar's work affirms a vision of Ukrainian identity that is polyethnic, inclusive, and enriched by cultural plurality. So, at a time when the Azov region is under occupation and when the Rumeyka language faces unprecedented danger, Akbar's poetry becomes not only an artistic response to war, but also an act of linguistic preservation and cultural resistance. His work reminds us that the literature written in minority languages plays an essential role in shaping Ukraine's cultural landscape and resisting attempts to erase local identities. So we are also very grateful to World Literature Studies for including this topic in its special issue and for giving space to voices from vulnerable linguistic communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think these were all the speakers.
Yeah.
Yes, great. Yes, I was deeply impressed by the variety of genres and languages that you included in the issue. You have poetry, prose, comics, you have Ukrainian language, Greek language, and I believe also some Russian language texts in the issue discussed.
I don't believe we have a Russian language.
You don't, but you have one poet who also writes in Russian and in Ukrainian, I think.
Yeah,
Yes, so I think you do. Okay.